Hey friends, welcome to the Blazor Power Hour. Oh, how are all of you doing today? I've got a show to talk about Blazor Hybrid and how we can integrate unit tests with it. If you've ever tested any Blazor apps before, this is going to look really familiar for you. So my friend Eagle Hansen will be very happy if he tunes in. Eagle makes one of the frameworks I'm going to talk about today. If you've done some testing, there still might be some tips in here that you might not have run into before. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Let's see if we can pull this off in an hour. I always go over, you know that, but let's give it a try anyway. And let's get this Hall of Mirrors off the screen. And I've got for you a couple projects that we need to look at, a couple NuGet packages, if my display will behave. I like this last Windows update. I can't seem to drag and drop windows where they belong without my second monitor going absolutely crazy. See? There we go. That's what I was talking about. There they are, though. So first, we've got bUnit. So this is a project by Eagle Hansen that is going to help us test our Blazor components. And there's Eagle in chat. Hey, Eagle. Looks like you're at NDC Oslo. That is awesome. I wish I was there. It sounds like a great event. I saw like pretty much all my friends tweeting that they were there. So say hello to everybody for me. Glad you could tune in for a minute. So Eagle, that's in chat with us, is the author of bUnit. And he showed me some really interesting tricks to help with bUnit and creating unit tests with a couple other frameworks. So we'll talk about AutoFixture and AutoData as well. Also use some Telerik JustMock, and we'll put all of these things together and test our Blazor components across multiple apps. So I've got a Blazor hybrid application here. Let's take a zoom in and let's make this a little bit easier to see as well. If I can get the right screen up, yeah, come on. Let's get that on the right. Nope. Windows, stop it. Windows misbehaving. I want Visual Studio on that screen. I want my face. There we go, down at the bottom. And hopefully the browser is back where it belongs. There we go. It is. So we've got a Blazor Hybrid app. And this Blazor Hybrid app has quite a few projects in the solution. If you're here on the show, about 2 weeks ago, I talked about why I did this. So let's take a review of what we have here. We've got the Blazor server app, or sorry, the ASP.NET server application. This is the server project for the app. It has some controllers in it. We're not really using this pages at all. It's mostly here for a web API controller. So we have the obligatory weather forecast controller sample where it's just generating some weather forecast data for us. So we'll run the app in a second and take a look at that. Eagle's sharing a sample with JustMock. Or we need a sample with JustMock. Need to create one of those, Eagle? I was looking at this once. Yeah. So no, I need to create that sample, and I looked at it one day, and I couldn't wrap my head around what it was trying to do because it wasn't actually like executable code, I think. So I kind of lost track of that. Yeah, I need to get back on that and try to fix it for you. We've also got the Blazor Hybrid app here. Blazor Hybrid app has basically a shell that displays the app in a native environment, so we can build desktop and mobile apps with our Blazor code. And then we have a client application, which is our WebAssembly project. And this WebAssembly project is nothing more than a shell that loads all of the services for a web browser client. So I have web, desktop, and mobile all in one solution. Now, the reason I'm able to do that is because these two UI projects, the client for the web browser and the hybrid app, which is the UI for desktop and mobile, all rely on these two dependencies here. So I've got a shared UI project and a shared logic project. The shared UI project is where all the magic really happens. We've got our pages, shared content, www.root, and imports.razor in there, and that is it. That is all. So these bootstrap, or the apps bootstrap the various clients that they're used on. So we've got at the top here, WebAssembly. And then we have in the hybrid app, Android, iOS, and Windows, and Mac OS. And they both use the views from this project. This is a Razor class library, the shared UI project. The shared logic project right now just has some forecast plain class objects in it. So this just describes what a weather forecast is. And this is used by literally everything in the solution. The client, the hybrid, the server, all use this weather forecast object. I believe even the components use this to some extent. So you'll see that dependency used everywhere. We don't really have any logic to test in here, though. So you won't see me running any tests against this forecast data. It's just kind of a shell of a thing, just a data container. But we do need to test our UI. So I want to write a unit test. We're going to pick out the hardest one of the bunch, and that's going to be our fetch data component. And we're going to add a test project that will test our test data component. Now, we're going to be using dependency injection on this component. So depending on which host boots this up, it may have its own implementation of this iFetchData service. And the underpinnings of how it gets its data have been abstracted away by that interface. So it might, read data from the web. Hey, Smab UK, welcome to the show. It could read data to the web. It could cache things on disk if you're on maybe a desktop machine. All that is inside of iFetchData or represented by iFetchData. So we're not really testing that functionality. What we're really testing here is, can our component display the data properly? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? So we need some test frameworks here. I like to use XUnit along with bUnit. bUnit works with NUnit, XUnit, and MS-test. You can see that in the documentation here. So there are your test frameworks. And for those of you in chat, if you want to get to bUnit, it is bunit.dev. Drop that link in chat for you. So this is our Blazor component test library. We'll get into the other two in just a minute. The first thing we need to do is install that brand new test library. And I hope you can't hear that, but unfortunately my neighbors have decided to mow right now. So if you hear some humming in the background, they've chosen a bad time. All right, so there's a couple ways you could create this test project in your solution. I'm going to go down to, I'm going to go down here and hit add new project. You could also install this through the command line. So up here in the documentation. I had this page up earlier. Let's go to this one. Yeah. You can do follow the instructions for creating a brand new bUnit test project. You can do this manually. Manually is actually the way I do it most of the time. You can do .NET new xUnit and then follow a couple steps through creating a brand new project. It's probably one of the easiest ways to do it. You could also use the bUnit test template. Yes, and as Eagle just pointed out, that's what I was going to show today. If you install the templates, Visual Studio has a new feature where if you have command line templates installed, it will now pick them up and create a UI for that. So all you have to do is take this one command, run it in the command line, .NET new install bUnit .template, and then the version. And then I needed to tell you, Eagle, that there is an update to one of the instructions here. So once you do .NET new install, then you do, no, it's this one. You can remove these two dashes from this command. So apparently they are deprecating this dash dash, and it's just .NET new install without the dashes. So I know that's a quick fix. I could probably actually, if this is on GitHub, I can put a pull request in for that. Yeah, it actually warned me. So like if we do this, it won't hurt anything if I run this again, but you'll get a warning in here. Usage of .NET new dash install is deprecated. Use .NET new install instead. It's so trivial, but yeah, it throws a warning at you when you run it for the instructions. So, so I've got that installed. And now I can go into my solution, right click, hit add new project. And right here at the top, it even shows the little new badge on it. I've got the bUnit test project by Eagle Hansen, and it is a project for testing Blazor components. So we'll hit next. I'm just going to go with the naming conventions I already have. Shared UI tests. So I'm going to create a shared UI test project. Do you have an ego problem, Eagle? My name's everywhere. Put it in one field and it starts showing up all over the place. So I'm going to test the shared UI project. You could even, depends on how you like to name things. You could just say Blazor shared UI tests. We'll go ahead and add that. And it gives us the option of our test framework right here. I'm going to choose xUnit. It's pretty much I think it's the predecessor of NUnit anyway. And then MS Test, I mean, yeah, I'm sure it works fine, but who uses it? So I'll hit create here. Oh, give me a second. So I'm working off of a branch that already has that folder in it. So let me unhide some hidden junk in here. There we go. I already had a folder by that name because Git being Git left that in there. New project. bUnit. Next. And then I can do my Blazor. So clever, right? Shared UI tests. Using some of this for the basis of an article, so trying to keep the naming simple. Now we can hit create. And now we've got our shared UI test project. Let's dive in and take a look. Out of the gates, what we have with the template here is that it is a Razor project. So this means we can write our tests in C# or Razor. I prefer Razor myself. And we have some examples in here, of course. We've got a counter component and a counter test and C# counter test. And I can imagine that I can just run tests from this and it should work just fine. So we've got two kind of hello world examples here that are testing this component for us. And they both pass. So there's actually 4 tests in the bundle there. So we're testing our button click and making sure our button starts at 0. Okay. So we know this works, and we can go in and remove the setup files here. And now we just have our shared UI test project. Now, the next thing I need to do is add some dependencies because we want to test our shared UI components. So let's go ahead and add a project reference. And I want my shared because I need the weather forecast plain class object and shared UI. So I'm going to reference both of those. I don't need any of this other stuff though. Let's go ahead and add that. I like to also go into my imports file. This just makes things a little bit easier. So using my Blazor, put the namespace in for the shared UI stuff. Otherwise, you're just going to end up typing this a lot. So I've got that. Let's go ahead and write a test. So I'm going to do new item. And I'm going to choose a Razor component to make my test. I'm going to call this the fetch data tests. So I'm going to test my fetch data component in this file. Now, I don't know how this would get added, Eagle, but maybe a cool thing would be an add new item template for a Razor component test. I don't know how you create those templates off the top of my head. That would be neat though. So it would maybe stub out what I'm about to type. So I want to inherit here the test context. And this is going to turn my component into a test context driven component test. So I have access to this test context very easily now. Just saves me a little bit of typing. Now let's take a look at our fetch data component, which is in our shared UI pages fetch data. So fetch data has some dependency injection going on. So we're going to handle that in a minute. Let's just do something simple and just verify this H1 tag exists, just to kind of get the ball rolling. Just give me 1 second here. Let me grab something on my other machine or monitor. Because we're going to talk about some other stuff here in a minute. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to do is create a fact. So this is the attribute that defines that whatever function follows this code is going to be a unit test. All unit tests need to be public so the test runner can see them. And then it is going to be a basic method. So I'm going to say fetch data heading is rendered like this. And I'm just going to verify that that header tag is in that component. Now, I'm just doing a simple test here just to exercise this. It's not going to actually define where in the HTML tree this exists. I'm just going to go ahead and grab it out and make sure it's even there at all, just for something easy to do. So I'm going to define a component under test, and then I'm going to call render on the component. So I'm going to call fetch data here, and I'm going to self-close this tag. I'm not passing any data or anything into it, no parameters here. I'm just going to render fetch data as is. And notice I can do this using Razor. So I'm calling in that Razor component directly using just Razor code. That's because we're in a Razor file. And the test runner, because of bUnit, can run this and render our component, and then we can verify it. Methods must have a return type. Oops, I forgot the return type on this. So this is void. It's not returning anything. So we're rendering our component now. So let's assert something. So we're going to follow the arrange act assert type of methodology. And then say var, we're going to take and find that H. Oh, come on. My space bar is, I think I wore out my space bar. Might need a new keyboard here soon. I'm going to say component under test, find. Oh, it's not my space bar. It's Visual Studio. What the heck? It's making me double type a lot of keys for no reason. I'm going to go ahead and find the H1 tag. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and find the H1 tag. I'll stash it in this variable. And then I can call, and I can do this all in one line. I'm just trying to make it easy to read so we can all learn together. Markup matches. And then H1 is going to be weather forecast. And that actually needs to be lowercase, weather forecast. All right. You can do inline fragment in markup matches too. I don't know what you mean. Oh, start with the @ sign. So, and drop the quotes. Ah, yes. So we're not comparing an exact string here. That's right. So we're actually verifying the HTML, not just a string. So markup matches, we want a H1 with weather forecast in it. Thank you, Eagle. It's funny as I have notes for this, and the notes say exactly that, and I somehow force a habit. Now we can go to Test Explorer here. Let's go ahead and rerun all tests because we deleted some. And then we should get a passing test. Build succeeded. And something has gone awry. So no elements were found with the matching selector H1. I have a feeling that this component is not actually a component. This is just rendering an HTML element called fetch data because reasons. Maybe, let's see here. I'm in blazor.sharedUI.pages. So this probably didn't get imported correctly. .pages. And if we go back to our test, there's the highlighting I'm looking for. So now if I hover over it, you actually see it's an actual, actual component. So if we rerun that again, this test should pass just fine. Yeah, Eagle's right on top of things again. You're missing your using statement. And still something. Okay, property for data. There's no registered type of service. I fetch data service. Okay. So we're getting an error. This is good. So we actually need to do some dependency injection here to make this thing work. So I'm going to try to make this as easy as possible by mocking the data service that fetch data pulls in. So we have this inject I fetch data service as data here. And my unit test is failing because there is no registered service of type I fetch data service. That is the one of the easiest errors to resolve in Blazor. That just means that you did not register a service for that dependency injection to happen. So in here, what I need is to resolve some sort of I fetch data service, and then in some method, I need to register that I data service. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a public constructor here. Look at that. That actually works in Razor now. That's something that's somewhat new. Some of these auto completions didn't work in Razor before. So we've got our public constructor here. And since we're in a test context, I can call services dot add. And what I need to add in here is a data service. This is actually going to be add. I can do singleton here. And then I want to add in that data service, but I need to create it somehow. I could fake it. I'm going to mock it. I think the mocking is going to be easier for this. So I'm going to do a add or manage NuGet packages here and add a NuGet package to help me with this. Yeah, it's nice to see the test fail. It is actually nice to see that it is working. I'm going to browse here. And I'm going to say Telerik just mock. So what is Telerik just mock? Let's go ahead and install it. While it installs, it'll install quickly, but it'll give us a second here to talk about it. There is a free, yes, this is free mocking framework. It is free, open sourced. Yep. It is updated regularly. Yeah, open source is as you can go to GitHub and actually see the code for it. It works with all sorts of things. And I can show you some fun tricks with it as well. So there is a paid version as well. And that gives you, this used to be really popular during Silverlight when it was popular as well. SharePoint, entity framework mocking, all sorts of other stuff that you can get with the paid edition, but the free one gets you through our component life cycles that we need to mock for. So let's go ahead and accept that license agreement there, and then bounce back over to, first of all, let's go to imports again and import a using statement, Telerik.justMock. So we don't have to add that to the top of our file too. I'm going to come up here and just set up now an I fetch data service, and I'm going to call this mock fetch data service. Come on, autocomplete. Fetch data service. I'll throw a little underscore in front of that so I know it's here, and call this one mock fetch data service, just to be clear what I'm doing. And then we need to mock that data service out. So in my constructor, I'm going to call a mock fetch data service equals, and then I'm going to use the keyword mock here to create an iFetch data service. And that is all I need to generate that dependency. And then I can take this and put it here. So I'm declaring this globally within the test. I'm mocking or setting up a setting the variable here to, or the field, by mocking and calling create on iFetch data service, and justMock is going to look at the iFetch data service and then implement a class based on all of its members and set that here. And then once I have this, I can just say add singleton and put it in the service collection and satisfy that. We're not calling the service yet in here, so this should pass. When we start calling the service, we're going to have to do some more work here. So there we go. Our test is now passing. So we've satisfied so far. We've checked to see if this H1 tag exists. We could do a markup matches and test this whole thing out. I'm kind of doing this individually. We've satisfied that it needs an iData service, but we haven't looked at this part of the code yet. We've got this whole table here that when data loads, we want to make sure that table is displayed. And that data comes from the fetch data service. So if we look down here in the component code, we are going to, on initialize async, go to the service here, the iFetch data service, and run the get weather forecast async method, which, depending on what platform you're on, may use different methods of fetching that data service. So you may need some tests in an XUnit project to test out, those various methods of doing things, or test the service itself. But we're focusing on the component here and making sure the component works, and all of those implementation details should be tested separately. So let's set up another test here. Let's do fact. And then this is going to be a public void. Every time IntelliSense comes up, I need to like double tap this now. Fetch data table is rendered. Okay. So we're going to test that the table is rendered. So we're going to need some more stuff here. First of all, our table needs data. So we've got a mock iFetch data service, and that iFetch data service has a method on it. If we just play around with the API for a second, mock data service, we hit dot, it has a get weather forecast async method on it. So what we really need to do is mock this out. And we need to tell justMock what we want to return from the weather forecast data service in order for it to populate our table with data. Because right now that data service doesn't have a proper mock behind it. It's just kind of giving us a bunch of empty references or placeholders for iFetch data service methods and properties. So let's try to put those things together. So I'm actually going to do this arrange down here inside of the test method. And what I want to do is set up justMock so it arranges that method call. I'm going to say mock.arrange. And I'm going to pass in an empty constructor, or empty function with no parameters. And I'm going to say mock data service dot get weather forecast async. And this is the method I want to create that that arrangement for. And when I call this, I'm going to say returns. I can tell this what I want it to return. So get weather forecast async should return a task of weather forecast, a nullable array of weather forecasts. A task of a nullable array of weather forecasts. So that's what we need to generate here. And we need some test data. Again, we could fake that data. This is a nice thing that I learned from Eagle, is we can use something called AutoData to do this for us, make things really easy. So if we look back up at my notes here, if you go to GitHub and check out this AutoData project, I'll throw this up in the chat room here. We've got inline theories with AutoData theories. So with this NuGet package, we can call theory and pass the argument or the attribute AutoData here, and any parameters that we have on our unit test, it will use this theory attribute to theory and AutoData attribute to populate these with kind of like, it's like GUID data. If you look down here, this is kind of what it will give you for these items. So for integers, it's going to give me a nice integer. And then for the text field, it's going to give me a prefixed field with a GUID. So it's got a unique string here that it can test against. Never return nullable collections, just an array empty when there's no data. Then we'll code. Okay. I think this just piggybacked off of the sample from like the Hello World project, but I'll check on that. I don't think I personally wrote that. I think when I grabbed, it's a good point, but I think when I grabbed the fetch data example, let's see. It was something to do with how HTTP GET from JSON async works. And this, even though it's not a nullable array here, I think because it's a GET, the task makes it nullable or something. I can't remember. I have to look at it. Use HTTP client directly, and it can return null if it fails. I will have to talk about that one offline too. Like I remember there's something with the example that it forced this scenario. But that's a good point. Let's see here. So we're going to return this, and we need to pass in. We need to get the dependency first. So let's grab this dependency, and we will install Yeah. Okay, so it may not have been a forced thing, but it's definitely in their sample. And I just tried to use what I already had. I'm going to use AutoData. That's weird. It's not coming up. It's going to be AutoFixture is the actual project name, isn't it? AutoFixture XUnit. is going to be the actual dependency here. I'm trying to remember which one is the proper one. So I've got, please use for xUnit .NET 2. xUnit 2. I didn't know that, like, there was an xUnit 2. Okay, so we'll install the xUnit. Use one for xUnit 2. Okay. If I hit decline, will it cancel out? What is the difference with this? It's not clear by the dependencies here. Oh, this is xUnit. Oh, xUnit 2 is the version number, I'm imagining. So I didn't install xUnit directly because of the template. It says xUnit, yeah, 2.4.2. Gotcha. I gotcha. And then I've got my parameters now that I need to add here. Oh, first we need to change this, sorry. This can be a theory now. And then we have auto data. And control dot does not work in this context. So I need to go back to imports and add a using statement for AutoFixture. Righty. Why is it not coming up in here? I can't drop a using statement. Did it add the dependency successfully? I thought I did. Oh, it's not there. Did I not hit install? I thought I did. AutoFixture xUnit 2. Install. Did it fail to install? I agree. Okay. There. It installed that time. I went through the motions. Thanks for dropping in, Eagle. Appreciate it. Have fun at the conference. AutoFixture xUnit 2. So I can save that out now and go back to my test. And inside of here, you can see my auto data attribute has been accepted. And in this, I'm going to add a weather forecast. I don't have, I need that in my imports as well. So I have my Blazor shared UI. I don't have my Blazor shared. We'll put that in our imports. So now I can grab a weather forecast. And I just blew up Visual Studio doing that. And it is going to be a nullable array because reasons. And then we will call this forecasts. And what AutoData is going to do is it's going to see this parameter and say, oh, if this needs an array of weather forecasts, it will then look at this weather forecast object and go, okay, we're going to create a unique date time, a unique integer for the temperature, and a string for the summary. Populate that in an array. I think it gives you 3 items by default. So I think it'll be a count of 3. So this forecast now can just be passed into my mock. And I can say the mock returns the forecast, but it is a task. So this needs to be a task.from result of forecasts. That's going to set up the actual task part of it. So now we're satisfying that. Fuel Snabble, welcome. Welcome to the show. All right. So we're currently testing if our fetch data component actually renders this table of data. We've used bUnit to test the HTML portion of it. We've got JustMock that is satisfying our injected data service. And then we used AutoData to populate the return function of that data service. Just a little catch up there. Now I can take this table and I'm going to go in to my test here. I'm going to kind of recreate this portion of the code. Next I need to do a little act here. And we're going to take and create a component under test and render that component. Again, it's going to be the fetch data component. We'll use a self-closing tag on that. And then we will assert. And when we assert this, I'm really fixated on getting this table portion tested. So I'm going to set up a variable here that looks for that table. I'm going to say find. We're going to go through the DOM here and look for the table. We'll use that selector to get the table. And now that we have the table, we can call markup matches on it. And I can just use some razor code here. And thanks, Visual Studio, but no thanks. Don't need spaces in there. Oh boy, put spaces all over the place. Why? Visual Studio, stop, please. Nobody asks for your help. Wow. Whenever I paste HTML in here, it goes berserk and puts a bunch of weird spaces and junk in there that I'm not asking it to put in. All right. So putting it outside of that parentheses seemed to help. We'll go ahead and slap an @ symbol on it. That'll help it not yell at us anymore. All right. So that should make it happy. There we go. All the squiggles are gone. So now we're saying we might be able to clean that up too, somewhat. So now we're saying table markup matches, and then we're rendering the same table that we'd like to see in the component. And we're going to double check to make sure that the auto data that's generated is looped over and displayed properly inside of this component. That way, if somebody goes in and they make changes to the fetch data component, they mess around with maybe the some new guy comes along and says, why are we formatting here, deletes it or something, the test starts failing. You know, those pesky new guys. Always doing new things they shouldn't be doing. All right. Bad at coming up with theoretical reasons why tests should fail. I apologize. All right, so we're going to run this. And hopefully we wrote that test right, and it will pass. But notice we didn't have to create like a fake data service to deliver fake data. So we saved a lot of time using AutoData and JustMock to do that. And for some reason, the test, I guess it's compiling all of the projects, not just the test project. I probably rebuilt the entire solution. That's why it's taking so long. And it is now running the tests, and the tests have completed, and we have tested the data portion of that fetch data component. Now, there's no error handling code in here for if something goes wrong with the fetch or the get data process here. So we could test this out. There are methods for creating errors in JustMock that we could use. and force things to happen so we could, get our null, for example. We might be able to do that without being too heavy-handed with JustMock. If you're testing HTTP client directly here, which we're not going to do because we're abstracted away from it. But if you were to write some tests against the weather forecast service here, what you could do is you could tell JustMock to actually return an error from that service. So that's something that you could do as well. I think I've got that code somewhere. We might be able to play with it. I can't remember off the top of my head. Let me find it on, I think it's in a private repo. So I'm going to take it off screen for a second while we have a few minutes still. And you will learn about this if you look at my course on Manning about unit testing. There we go. Let's see. Oh, wrong project. Yeah, I actually don't have that on my GitHub. Let me check on my drive here. It is not in that one. Yeah, so I wrote a test course for Manning. So if you want to learn more about this, and I'll show a little bit more here. Unfortunately, I can't show this whole project on screen though, so I'm gonna have to yank this guy off screen. Tests, and then components. Sorry about this. I'm trying to remember which one it is now. I think I need to be under pages. Let's see if that did it. So this is not the right one. I have a test that purposely throws errors. There we go. So here we can do exception handling. That's what I needed. So if you wanted to test like what would happen if there was an exception, which we're not handling exceptions, by the way. This is not wrapped in any kind of try catch. This would be a good TDD exercise or test-driven development exercise, is to kind of copy. Let me put this in a comment real quick. Copy this test, and then write some sort of error handling around this by throwing an exception instead of returning data. So we could use JustMock here, and we'll go ahead and throws service throws exception. Conceptually, you probably want to test the service with this and make sure the service isn't going to throw exceptions, but whatever your scenario is, you might need to do something like this. So you could say mock.arrange, call a method on some class, and say that instead of returning something, I'm going to throw an exception. So that forces me to write exception handling code. And then I might not have a table in that scenario. I might have, let's just say, there's going to be some other message. Maybe there's a paragraph tag that shows up, and that paragraph tag then will show a message. And there's other error handling, or not error handling, but error message components in actually this. If I find a paragraph tag, I think I just need text in that case. Or actually, probably not even that. Yeah, let's see what happens with paragraph. We'll start with paragraph. I'm pretty sure if I find the paragraph, Yeah, actually I do need the p tag. Okay. So we'd say like an error has occurred. And there's an error regions, I guess, error zones, error regions. I can't remember the component name in Blazor, but we have a component to handle displaying an error message in Blazor, and then you could create your own as well. Maybe this is a toast, something like that that comes up, but still. So we're going to throw purposely an exception now, trying to get our weather forecast. So it's going to blow up. And then in our fetch data component, we're going to find a paragraph tag that says an error occurred. Now, when I run this test, obviously it's not going to work because we don't have any way of displaying that. I never wrote the code yet. So now we're doing a little test-driven development. We've introduced a new problem to solve, and we don't have a code path to resolve this problem yet. So as we expected, this says an exception of system exception was thrown because our service call to get weather forecast async just blew up on us purposely using justmock. So this forces me to go back to fetch data and throw a try catch around this and handle this error somehow. So I'm going to try to get my weather forecast async. Something went wrong inside that service. It has blown up. And instead of just throwing the error out and causing the user to have to reboot the application, I want to instead, let's see, we need a flag of some sort to let our page know that it has errors. So we would say bool has errors is false. And then if there is an error, we would then set this has errors to true. And this gives us something in the UI we can act on. So in here, we're going to say if forecast is null, then it's loading. We probably also want to do something with that so it's not showing loading. So forecasts is going to then be an array dot empty. So that should actually keep it from blowing up. Weather forecasts. So we're going to give it an array of empty weather forecasts so that doesn't trigger the table to, or the loading message. Or we could just even wrap this whole thing. If has errors, we'll display an error message. So we may not actually need what I just typed up there. We're going to go ahead and grab this to satisfy our unit test. Drop that paragraph in. And we can say else. And of course, I'd clean all this up so it's not one big tree of if then else's. There are better ways to do this, but we could get there. Just not in an hour. We're almost at the top of the hour here. I just wanted to show how we can fake an exception here. So we don't really need that now. We kind of path that out of this. So if it has errors, it's going to show the error message. We would also probably want to put a button in here to reload the data, because you don't want it just to display this paragraph of error occurred forever. But we don't have time for that. But we would essentially move this whole method call or this whole piece of logic to a method, abstract that out to a method, call the method from initialize async, and then also call it from the reload button. So we could try to reload that data again. But we don't have that in our test. Let's just make our unit test pass for now. So now we should be able to run this, and when it throws an exception, the weather forecast component won't explode. And HTML comparison failed. Oh, I found the wrong paragraph tag. So there are 2 paragraph tags now. I forgot about this one up here. We could use a selector to get this, a clever selector. I'm just going to put an ID or something on it for now, or a class even, because it probably honestly would be some sort of error message. So it would probably have something like a alert. So let's actually change this a little bit. Div alert dash danger, and then inside of that we'll put a paragraph tag. So we'll modify our test to accommodate that. That's a little bit more of an intelligent way to display an error, and it works out in our favor anyway. So this we can use, alert danger. Go back to our, actually we can copy this whole thing and paste it back in here. So we're going to say if there is an exception, then we are going to render a div tag with this paragraph in it. And my test just helped me kind of solve some other problems there I didn't see. Hopefully you'd have like a UI UX person giving us some of these ideas, not getting them from our TDD, but hey, it worked out. So let's not frown upon it too much. The testing cycle usually goes a little bit faster. I don't know if this is what's it called? Oh, I forgot to update this. This needs to be alert danger. And my find got messed up there. Let's just rerun that one test. Maybe that'll help. There we go. I keep hitting the rerun all. That's why it's taking forever. Now it's passing. So I was using test runner wrong. All right. So we looked at a couple test framework things. We've got JustMock, Telerik JustMock. You can grab that on NuGet, or you can go to the website, check it out. Free mocking framework, JustMock Lite. I'll drop that in chat, but feel free to Google that as well. You'll find that up on NuGet, GitHub, and our website. Again, there's a free and a paid version of this. The paid has like sealed mocking, partial mocking, EF mocking, all sorts of other things, private accessors, extension method mocking, all sorts of stuff that you can do outside of your normal mock behaviors. But for Blazor, you can get away with the free bits for most things. So check that one out. Of course, bUnit. If you're not familiar with bUnit, that's definitely something to look at. If you want to learn more about bUnit and Blazor together, I have a live project on Manning. If you go to Manning, and I'll put this link in chat as well, and you look for, we could probably just do bUnit, to be honest. There we go. Unit testing with bUnit. Oh, I don't want to go into it. I want the cover page. Don't take me into the... I know I own it. I just want to see it. Unit testing with bUnit. I want to link to the thing. There we go. This will be fine. So it's part of a series, but you can get them independently if you just want to learn the testing bits. If you want to just learn the testing bits, I mean, you might as well grab the free part and go through that if you want to. It teaches you how to create a Blazor application. Project 2, $20. It will walk you through all the things that you need to learn how to make proper unit tests with bUnit. So it will teach XUnit, bUnit, how to test layouts, handle exceptions, fakes, all of that stuff. And it's probably going to take you a couple hours to get through that. If you do the entire series, there is a certificate at the end. So you can use that at work or something for maybe getting onto the Blazor team, or maybe trying to shake a couple extra coins out of your boss. You could do that. There's also state management and authentication in those other projects as well. So you want to grab the whole series or just look at the testing parts, it's up there. I dropped that in chat. And it's kind of like a workshop. You work through it. There's kind of steps that you need to solve to make sure that you're doing the right thing. And then there is a certification question at the end. And then if you do the entire series, there's a full certification you can get from Manning. That's all I've got, folks. We are just a few minutes past the top of the hour, and definitely appreciate everybody coming out and looking at this. By the way, this is testing a Blazor Hybrid app. So I don't think I ever actually ran this, but if we run the app, the component that we looked at is fully tested now. Pretty much, for the sake of the show, it's fully tested. It's testing the weather forecast page here. If I go back to my project and I do this run, let's do a build project. Let's see here. Debug. Start new instance. I'm just going to run the application in... let's see, I don't remember which mode I had selected, but probably need to update some of my tools. It looks like it's trying to deploy to Android, and I don't have the Android emulator currently working. So it does, this project does go for desktop, mobile, and Android. And it will render that same fetch data in all those platforms. Unfortunately, I installed some new bits the other day and it looks like it broke something. Let's try a startup project, and we'll turn this over to a Windows machine, and that should make it run a little bit easier. Run that guy. The Windows machine build always is a little bit more reliable because it doesn't have that emulator in the way. And then we also need to start our server back up. So this is a desktop application, and that desktop application has our fetch data component that we just tested in it, as well as our web application. So how about that? So now we're testing Blazor Hybrid with bUnit, JustMock, and all those other things I mentioned. So if you know how to test Blazor, you pretty much are on track to test your Blazor Hybrid apps as well. Thanks, everybody. And make sure you hit the subscribe button. You'll get notifications when we go live with our other shows. We've got our design show on Monday with Catherine. We've got, I just was on yesterday with Alyssa on her show, .NET or JS Girl in a .NET World. We were talking about JavaScript interop in .NET 7, which was pretty cool. So jump back on the channel, look that one up, and watch what we talked about. There's some new bits that are shipping in release candidate 1 that let you do some JavaScript interop stuff. You can make your own Blazor-like framework if you wanted. You could use Vue with .NET now. You could do all kinds of crazy stuff on the front end. So yeah, give that a look. And you'll find that on our Code It Live channel. So we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.